President Bush and Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson expected to speak tomorrow about reaching a deal with mortgage lenders to freeze interest rates on certain subprime loans for 5 years to stem the rising tide of foreclosures. Now, in a CNBC exclusive to tell us her own plan to save subprime borrowers is Democratic presidential candidate Senator Hillary Clinton. Senator, so nice to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's great to be here.
You just finished talking with CEOs and business people from the area about your plan. Go through step by step specifically how you envision saving us out of this crisis of subprime.
Well, I am pleased, first of all, that it appears as though the Bush administration is going to work on something that I call a workout. I have been talking about this for months now. I sent a letter to Secretary Paulson over the last several days outlining what I thought should be done, and from the little we're hearing, it sounds like everybody's moving in the same direction, because that is important. We shouldn't play politics with this. We should solve the problem. I think it's agreed upon that we need to have a freeze or a timeout on foreclosures while we try to figure out how we can work out the conditions for people who are in owner-occupied homes. We have to freeze the adjustable rate mortgages and try to figure out how we can buy some breathing room for up to 5 years at least. And we need to have more transparency in the market. In addition, some of the servicers have told me that they're frankly worried about participating because they're worried about legal liability to their ultimate investor who holds the paper. So we need to look at how we get them to the table but also provide them some protection. I also would like to see a $5 billion fund to help communities come up with ways of keeping people in homes, because otherwise you'll have a cascade of people being foreclosed upon, neighborhoods turning to blight, increasing crime. And I was pleased that today Mayor Bloomberg proposed such an idea for the city. So
where does that $5 billion come from?
Well, it's going to come from where it comes from, the budget. It's going to come from emergency spending. I view this as part of the stimulus that I think is going to be required over the next year to 2 or 3 years in the face of the economic challenges we face. It's not only about our mortgage crisis. We are focusing on that because the effects of it are so obvious. But it's beyond that. It's about what's going on in the economy. Wages are stagnant for the vast majority of middle-class families. Healthcare costs and education costs and energy costs, all of those are increasing, and people are stalled. And as you look around the world with the declining dollar, with the Fed trying to figure out how it's going to deal with this new challenge, I think it's important that we do consider stimulus of the right kind, and that would be focused on middle-class and working people, the vast majority of Americans.
Has the Fed done the right move so far? Would you like to see interest rates come down further?
Well, I have to say, I think it's up to the Fed to make those determinations. I'm very wary about making political pronouncements about what the Fed as an independent body should do. But I think they're facing a complex of problems. Of course, we have the mortgage crisis and the accompanying credit crunch. We have the falling dollar. We have the increasing trade deficit. We have the huge indebtedness to countries around the world. And what we have to be concerned about is that as we lower interest rates, as the Fed has already done, but we still see the dollar continuing to fall, what does that mean for the medium and long term? It's a tough call, and obviously I'm not going to interfere in that process, but I think we need government action as well as Federal Reserve Board action to try to tackle this.
Let's go through some of your proposals, specifically the 5-year freeze. Isn't the devil in the details when it comes to this? Even Paulson's plan that we talked about yesterday, we had him on the show Monday. What's to stop someone from gaming the system, someone from saying, look, I did all the right things. I was responsible. I took on a mortgage that I can actually afford. And now the person who did all the wrong things by getting in over their head is actually getting their rate frozen. I'll miss a few payments. I'll make my financial picture look weaker, and I get to get a frozen rate. How do you stop that?
Well, 3 things. First, what I proposed would certainly not include real estate speculators. It would be for owner-occupied homes. Secondly, someone who goes into this workout, it's obviously going to have implications for their credit rating. I mean, it's not going to be a free pass. It's just going to save their home and save the neighborhood and the community that they're part of, because as you look at the map, you can see the clusters of these subprime loans that were given, and then the cascading effect that would be so damaging. But thirdly, you know, there may be some people who, in your words, would be considered to game the system. But the overall problem is so big that I don't think we can be focused on the few that might benefit justifiably from the many who were lured into these subprime mortgages. They were told that they didn't really have to verify their income. They were not given explanations as to what they were signing. You know, one of the cruelest aspects of this are these prepayment penalties, where people who literally thought they were doing the right thing, they believed that if they saved their money and actually paid more than their mortgage required to get ahead, to try to get their home, like a lot of first-time owners feel like doing, that they have been penalized and these higher adjustable rates were triggered. So I think we can do this as carefully and prudently as possible, but I have no doubt we have to act.
Yeah, but why are we bailing out the person who was irresponsible? Where's the accountability and the responsibility for the person who actually got in over their heads? There was an op-ed in the paper today saying, look, once again, Senator Clinton is coming out and bailing out the person who basically was irresponsible and rewarding the person who actually took on the risk.
Well, I think that is a clever thing to say, but it really misses the point. I don't see this as a bailout. If it were, then once again we'd see the banks being bailed out. We'd see the lenders not being held responsible. There is enough responsibility and, dare I say, blame to go around here. The regulators, they're not being held accountable. You know, people have lost their jobs in this city, but they've left with tens of millions of dollars. They're not being held accountable. So why all of a sudden do we get really harsh on some homeowner who wanted to have part of the American dream, did everything he or she thought they were supposed to do, but did get in over their head because of unscrupulous lending practices, because of fraudulent claims by the people who were supposed to be assisting them? Now we've got these very complicated securitized instruments that half the people in this town who helped to sell them can't explain. You know, Ben Bernanke had to go and get a tutorial. Nobody understands them. They are opaque. So, you know, it's always convenient to say, well, let's pick on the little guy. Let's pick on somebody who wanted to be part of the American dream. Everybody else gets off scot-free. That is not the American way. I'm for shared responsibility. If somebody was unscrupulous, wherever they are in this chain, they shouldn't get any kind of help. But if they were part of a scheme that the regulators should have understood, that the Fed should have stepped in, that others should have said, wait a minute, this is too good to be true, then let's not just point our fingers at the ultimate purchaser. Let's go all the way up the line.
Senator, with all due respect, where was Congress during all of this? We had a lot of non-banks coming on the scene with all of these crazy proposals, no documentation, no interest for several months. Did Congress understand what was going on?
No, and under the Republican Congress, they didn't want to understand. You know, the ostrich head was in the sand. You didn't have an administration who paid attention to the early warning signals. You didn't have a Congress that cared about it. And the net result is, as I say, everybody shares the responsibility. If something is too good to be true, it is too good to be true. But what we've seen is this incredible frenzy to come up with these exotic instruments. They're being sold all over the world. Nobody is accountable for them. And yet we're going to pay the biggest price, because it's going to be our neighborhoods, our communities, our homeowners who are going to be forced out of their homes, who are going to be taken out of the economy because they don't even have the resources to be consuming the way that we need to keep this economy afloat. So, you know, we can either step back, as the administration and the Republican Congress did, or we can try to take some action, and I prefer to try to take some action.
Let's talk about the time frame. We've got billions of dollars in resets happening over the next year.
That's right.
Are you going to be able to push this legislation through in order to actually make a difference?
Well, I'm hoping that with the administration's upcoming announcements, they're going to take the lead, because indeed they should. It should be the Treasury Department. It should be the administration, with the President speaking out and strongly supporting this kind of workout. The Congress may well have a role to play, but I think, again, if we start working together on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, which is what I advocate, then we can solve this problem. But if one half decides they're going to ignore it and the other half is trying to come up with legislation that isn't supported by the administration, we can't solve this. So let's everybody get together. Let's be honest about the problem and what caused it, because, as I say, there is plenty of responsibility to go around. And let's do what Americans do best. We roll up our sleeves, we solve problems. Let's do it for this one.